January 23, 1943. Eglin Field Proving Ground, Florida. The temperature gauge read 14 degrees Fahrenheit, unseasonably cold for the Florida Panhandle. Samuel Green stood beside a weapon that had just failed catastrophically for the 17th time in 2 hours. The Browning M250 caliber machine gun, America's primary aircraft weapon, sat frozen and useless on its test mount. Steam rose from the barrel, a visible mockery of the weapon's failure in cold weather conditions. Major Robert Johnson of the Army Air Force's Armament Laboratory threw his clipboard onto the frozen sand in frustration. "This is impossible, Green. We have 423 B-17s in England right now, each mounting 13 of these guns. That is 5,499 weapons that will freeze solid the moment they climb above 20,000 feet. The 8th Air Force is shooting down German fighters at a 3-to-1 rate when the guns work. When they jam, our bombers are defenseless targets." Samuel Green, a 52-year-old civilian toolmaker from Connecticut who had never finished high school, never served in the military, and never designed a weapon in his life, stared at the failed machine gun with an expression that mixed frustration with curiosity. The Army ordnance experts had declared the problem unsolvable. The Browning Company engineers had tried everything within conventional parameters, yet here it sat, jammed solid, while young men died in bombers over Germany because their guns would not fire. Green picked up a small notebook from his tool bag and wrote a single sentence that would revolutionize automatic weapons design worldwide. "The problem is not the gun. The problem is we are trying to make the gun work like we think it should work, instead of letting the gun tell us how it wants to work." Major Johnson stared at the civilian toolmaker who spoke in riddles. "Green, that makes no sense whatsoever. The gun is an engineered mechanism. It works according to physical principles. We have test data, engineering specifications, and mathematical models." Green pulled a worn machinist's file from his bag. "With respect, Major, your mathematical models did not design this gun. John Browning designed it using feel. I am a toolmaker. I understand feel. If you give me 1 week and permission to modify this weapon in ways that will horrify your engineers, I will make it never jam again, ever." What neither man knew was that this moment would trigger the most controversial modification in United States military weapons history. Within 3 months, Green's impossible trick would transform the 50 caliber Browning from a temperamental weapon into the most reliable machine gun ever built. Within 6 months, his modifications would save thousands of American airmen from death. The mathematics of automatic weapons design were about to be rewritten by a civilian toolmaker with a file and absolute conviction. The Browning M250 caliber machine gun represented John Moses Browning's final masterpiece. Designed in 1918, it had become ubiquitous across American military operations by 1942. Every heavy bomber mounted multiple 50s. Fighter aircraft used them as primary armament. Ground vehicles carried them. Naval vessels mounted them everywhere. The United States military had committed to the 50 caliber as its universal heavy machine gun. Combat revealed a catastrophic problem. At altitudes above 20,000 feet, where temperatures dropped below -30 Fahrenheit, the weapons began malfunctioning with terrifying consistency. The statistics from November and December 1942 were horrifying. Of 213 B-17 missions flown, crews reported weapons malfunctions. On 161 missions, a 76% failure rate. Average number of jammed guns per aircraft, 4.7 out of 13 total weapons. The human cost was immediate. German fighter pilots quickly recognized the pattern, targeting bombers with disabled guns. In December 1942 alone, 14 B-17s were shot down after losing all defensive armament to weapons failures. That represented 140 airmen killed or captured because their guns jammed. The Army Ordnance Department responded with intensive investigation. Engineers identified multiple contributing factors. Lubricants thickened in extreme cold, tolerances tightened as metals contracted, moisture condensed and froze in mechanisms. Between October 1942 and January 1943, conventional modifications were tested extensively. Cold weather lubricants, tighter ammunition tolerances, heating elements, increased clearances, none worked. The 50 caliber malfunction rate remained above 60%. $2 million spent with minimal improvement. Samuel Green entered this crisis almost accidentally. He worked for Pratt & Whitney in Hartford, Connecticut, as a master toolmaker, specializing in precision gauge work. 37 years of 6-day weeks producing tools that other men used to build engines. When Pratt & Whitney received a contract to manufacture M2 machine guns, their test guns revealed the same cold weather jamming. The plant manager, desperate for solutions, offered a $1,000 bonus to anyone who could solve the problem. He stated that every engineer who has examined this weapon says the design is perfect. Therefore, the problem must be external. We cannot modify Browning's design. It is already perfect. Green found this troubling. In 37 years, he had learned that no design was perfect. Every mechanism had quirks that emerged only through use. Mathematical perfection and operational reliability were not the same thing. That evening, Green examined a failed prototype weapon. He disassembled it completely, measuring each part. Everything was within tolerance. Everything was exactly as specified. Yet the weapon had failed. As he reassembled it slowly, feeling how each component fit, he noticed something. The bolt carrier fit very precisely in its channel, but when Green pushed it by hand, he felt slight binding at certain points. He examined the channel more carefully. The surfaces were perfectly machined, but the channel had a barely perceptible bend, less than 0.02 of an inch over 12 inches, well within acceptable tolerances. But Green suspected this tiny deviation caused binding. In warm conditions, negligible. In cold conditions, with thickened lubricant, just enough to cause failure. That night in his basement workshop, Green began an experiment that would horrify Army engineers. Using a precision file, he removed metal from the bolt carrier, reducing its width by 0.03 of an inch. This increased clearance beyond specified tolerances. By engineering standards, he had ruined the weapon. By Green's judgment, he had allowed the bolt carrier room to cycle smoothly despite minor imperfections. The next morning at the test range, the modified weapon was placed in a refrigeration chamber at -30 Fahrenheit for 4 hours, then test-fired. It functioned perfectly. 100 rounds, 200 rounds, 500 rounds, no jams. The range officer was stunned, then horrified. You modified a military weapon without authorization? You changed dimensions outside specified tolerances. Green, that is illegal. Green responded calmly. The specifications create a weapon that jams. My modification creates a weapon that works. Which matters more? Within hours, Green faced the plant manager and the Army Ordnance Liaison, Captain Robert Mitchell. Captain Mitchell was furious about unauthorized modifications that could endanger service members. But the plant manager argued they should verify whether the modification actually works before dismissing it. Mitchell agreed to forward the weapon to Eglin Field for comprehensive testing. The weapon arrived at Eglin Field on January 18th. Major Johnson was skeptical but desperate. On January 23rd, in 14-degree temperatures, he mounted Green's modified weapon for cold weather testing. The results were extraordinary: 2,000 rounds without a single malfunction. Placed in a cold chamber at -50 Fahrenheit for 12 hours, fired immediately, no jams, deliberately fouled with sand and dirt, continued firing. Perfect function under conditions where standard weapons failed consistently. Johnson immediately requested that Green report to Eglin Field to explain his modification. On January 26th, Green arrived, bringing his tools and an attitude that would clash dramatically with military engineering culture. The meeting included Green, Johnson, 3 Ordnance Department engineers from Aberdeen Proving Ground, and 2 Browning Arms representatives. The atmosphere was hostile. Major Johnson began by stating facts. Mr. Green's modified weapon has demonstrated 100% reliability in conditions where standard weapons fail 60 to 70% of the time. Mr. Green, please explain exactly what you did. Green drew a simple diagram showing the bolt carrier and channel. I made the bolt carrier smaller, 0.03 of an inch. This gives it room to move even when the channel is not perfectly straight, and when cold makes everything tight. Standard tolerance assumes perfect channel, but channels are not perfect. Larger clearance allows bolt to travel smoothly despite imperfections. An Aberdeen engineer with a doctorate objected immediately. Mr. Green, what you describe is mechanically unsound. The specified clearances are calculated to ensure optimal cycling. Increasing clearance degrades all parameters. Your modification violates fundamental principles of automatic weapons design. Green listened patiently, then responded in a way that shocked everyone. Sir, I do not understand your mathematics, but I understand machines. I have worked with machines for 37 years. Your calculations say my modification should not work, but it does work. Perhaps your calculations are wrong. The room erupted. The argument continued until Major Johnson intervened. This debate is irrelevant. We have a crisis killing American airmen. Mr. Green has produced a solution. Our job is determining if it can be implemented across all M2 weapons. I am ordering comprehensive testing. If you're finding this story as compelling as I am telling it, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Stories about the civilians who changed warfare are what this channel is all about. Don't miss the next one. The comprehensive testing program began February 1st. 20 M2 weapons from 3 manufacturers were modified by Green personally. Each underwent extensive testing. Standard firing, cold chamber testing at -50 Fahrenheit, sustained fire of 5,000 rounds, deliberate fouling, high-altitude chamber testing, simulating 30,000 feet. The results were consistent across all 20 weapons. Malfunction rate in cold conditions, 0.8%. Standard unmodified weapons showed 68%. Grauman's modification reduced cold weather malfunctions by 99%, but implementing this across the military inventory presented enormous challenges. By February 1943, approximately 96,000 M2 weapons were in service, another 60,000 in production. The Ordnance Department estimated 18 months and $12 million to modify all existing weapons. General Leslie McNair and General Henry Arnold both pressed for immediate implementation, but the Ordnance Department insisted on additional testing. The bureaucratic battle was resolved when Lieutenant General William Cunson, Director of War Production, visited Eglin Field personally. After watching modified weapons fire flawlessly, Cunson asked Green 2 simple questions. Can this modification be performed quickly by trained armorers on weapons already in service? And can production lines incorporate this without slowing production? Green answered yes to both. Takes about 45 minutes per weapon. Production lines just machine to different dimension. No new equipment needed. Knudsen made a decision on the spot. Immediate implementation across all services. All existing weapons modified during routine maintenance. All production lines implementing new specifications immediately. The modification would be designated Modification 743, but became known as Green's Fix. The implementation revealed American industrial capacity at its peak. Within 1 week, detailed instructions distributed to every armory. Within 2 weeks, production lines incorporated new specifications. Within 1 month, mobile modification teams operating at air bases across the United States and England. Within 3 months, over 40,000 weapons modified. Within 6 months, all 96,000 existing weapons carried Green's modification. The combat impact was immediate. In March 1943, before modification, 8th Air Force bombers reported weapons malfunctions on 57% of missions. In April, with 30% modified, malfunction rates dropped to 38%. By June, with nearly all modified malfunction rates stabilized at under 4%, Green's modification reduced weapons failures by 94%. More significantly, bomber loss rates attributable to disabled armament dropped precipitously. In the first quarter of 1943, 14 B-17s were confirmed lost after total weapons failure. In the second quarter, after modification, only 2. The modification was directly saving bomber crews. German Luftwaffe pilots noticed the change. Intelligence reports from captured pilots show they recognized American bombers' defensive fire had become more reliable. One June report stated that American gunners now maintain consistent fire throughout engagement. Previous pattern of weapons failures no longer observed. Attacking American bombers now significantly more dangerous. Ground forces experienced similar improvements. Tank commanders reported vehicle-mounted 50s now functioned reliably. Infantry heavy weapons platoons found their 50s required less maintenance. The Pacific Theater saw improvements in high humidity and saltwater conditions. Navy vessels reported fewer jams during anti-aircraft engagements, critical against kamikaze attacks. One particularly dramatic example occurred November 2, 1943. Captain Robert Johnson, of the 56th Fighter Group, flying a modified P-47, was hit by cannon fire. His aircraft took 21 cannon strikes and over 100 machine gun hits. His guns continued firing throughout. Army engineers later concluded that without Green's modification, ensuring weapon reliability, Johnson likely would have died. Instead, he survived to become one of America's leading aces with 27 victories. The technical legacy extended beyond the M2. The principle of operational tolerance influenced all subsequent automatic weapons design. Post-war weapons, including the M60 machine gun and M16 rifle, incorporated clearances optimized for reliability rather than theoretical perfection. Green's insight became fundamental to American weapons development. Samuel Green received the Medal for Merit in April 1943, presented by General Arnold. The citation read, "For extraordinary achievement in weapons development, specifically for creating a modification to the Browning M2 machine gun that dramatically enhanced reliability and saved numerous American lives in combat." But Green remained uncomfortable with recognition. He attended the ceremony because Arnold personally requested. He accepted the medal with a brief thank you, declined interviews, and returned to Hartford and his work at Pratt & Whitney. Colleagues reported Green displayed the medal once, then stored it in his desk drawer where it remained until his retirement in 1951. Green received hundreds of letters from servicemen whose lives were saved by reliable weapons. He kept every letter in a wooden box in his basement. Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, a waist gunner on a B-17, wrote in July 1943, "Mr. Green, our plane was attacked by 6 German fighters last week. All 13 guns fired perfectly. We shot down 2 fighters and damaged 3 more. Before your modification, at least half our guns would have jammed. We would probably be dead now. Because of you, we came home. Thank you for giving us guns we can trust." Before we get to the incredible conclusion, I need to ask you something important. If you're enjoying this deep dive into history, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support helps us keep bringing these stories to you. The post-war military analysis revealed that the Ordnance Department had spent over $2 million and 5 months pursuing conventional solutions that failed. Green achieved success in 1 week with simple tools. A 1946 War Department study concluded this delay cost an estimated 64 bomber aircraft and 640 airmen, plus uncounted ground casualties. The study recommended that military development incorporate mechanisms for evaluating unconventional solutions from non-traditional sources. Green worked at Pratt & Whitney until retirement in 1956. During those 13 post-war years, he solved dozens of manufacturing problems and trained younger toolmakers. He rarely mentioned his Medal for Merit. When asked, he typically responded, "I fixed a gun that wasn't working right. That was my job." Fixing things is what toolmakers do. Green died in 1971 at age 80. His obituary was brief, mentioning his career and Medal for Merit. It did not mention that his modification had been incorporated into over 500,000 M2 machine guns. It did not note that his operational tolerance principle influenced every American automatic weapon designed since. Green would have preferred it that way. The M250 caliber machine gun remains in frontline service today. As of 2024, the weapon serves with United States forces and over 100 allied nations. Modern M2s still incorporate clearances derived from Green's original modification. The weapon has been in continuous production since 1921, the longest-serving machine gun in American military history. Its legendary reliability traces directly to Green's work. Total M2 production exceeds 3 million weapons. Approximately 2.1 million incorporated Green's modification. Everyone benefited from the insight of a civilian toolmaker who understood that machines speak to those who listen. From World War II through Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and continuing today, American service members have depended on .50 caliber weapons that work because Samuel Green filed a bolt carrier in his basement workshop. The modification technique became standard training for military armorers. The procedure Green developed is taught at every United States military armorer school. The emphasis on functional testing over dimensional measurement that Green championed became doctrine across military maintenance operations. The broader lesson concerns institutional openness to unconventional solutions. The Army initially resisted because it came from an uncredentialed civilian who violated specifications. Only senior leadership intervention overcame this resistance. General Knudsen wrote in his memoir that the military must create processes for identifying innovations regardless of source. Smart ideas come from unexpected places. Our job is recognizing them, not filtering them by credential. In 1988, the Smithsonian opened an exhibit on civilian contributions to World War II military technology. Samuel Green was featured prominently, with displays including his original tools, notebook, and the first modified bolt carrier. His Medal for Merit, donated by his family, was displayed alongside letters from servicemen. The exhibit was seen by over 3 million visitors, bringing Green's achievement deserved recognition 17 years after his death. Modern military weapons development incorporates formal mechanisms inspired partly by Green's example. DARPA actively solicits unconventional ideas from non-traditional sources. The Army Research Laboratory operates programs encouraging civilian engineers to address military challenges. The Ordnance School teaches Green's modification as an example of successful innovation from unexpected sources. The weapons community remembers Green through informal traditions. Instructors reference Green's rule when teaching modifications: measure twice, file once, test thoroughly. The annual Green Award recognizes individuals who achieve significant improvements through simple, practical solutions. The final assessment must acknowledge both the magnitude of Green's achievement and the circumstances that made it necessary. He solved a critical problem killing American servicemen. His solution was elegant, practical, and immediately implementable, but his solution was necessary only because institutional processes had failed. Rigid adherence to specifications, dismissal of unconventional approaches, and bias against non-credentialed innovators had prevented solving the crisis through normal channels. Today, whenever a .50 caliber machine gun fires reliably in Arctic cold, desert heat, or jungle humidity, that reliability traces to Samuel Green's modification. When Special Forces operators depend on their weapons in extreme conditions, they rely on principles Green established. The civilian toolmaker, who never finished high school, transformed the most ubiquitous heavy machine gun in military history. Samuel Green died quietly, lived modestly, and achieved immortality by making one gun work better. His story proves that the most important innovations often come from unexpected sources, that practical wisdom can exceed theoretical knowledge, that solving problems matters more than following rules. The mathematics were always simple. Standard M2 weapons, 68% malfunction rate in cold conditions. Green modified weapons, 0.8% malfunction rate. Difference: thousands of service members who came home because their guns worked. Thousands of families who remained intact. Thousands of lives saved by a civilian toolmaker with a file and conviction that working was better than perfect. The weapon that hangs in the Smithsonian, serial number 4-3-27891, is a Green modified M2 that served with the 8th Air Force. It fired over 80,000 rounds in combat without a single jam. The placard describes its combat record, but doesn't mention the Connecticut toolmaker who made that record possible. But armorers remember. Veterans remember. Anyone who depended on a .50 caliber machine gun that worked carries Samuel Green's legacy forward. The civilian who made America's .50 cal never jam taught lessons that transcend weapons development. Sometimes the best solution violates conventional wisdom. Sometimes expertise comes without credentials. Sometimes fixing what's broken matters more than defending what's supposedly perfect. Samuel Green's impossible trick made the impossible possible. He made the most used heavy machine gun in history, reliable under any condition. He saved thousands of lives. He asked nothing, except to be allowed to fix what was broken. That is the true story of how one civilian toolmaker, working with a file and conviction, made America's .50 caliber machine gun never jam again, and in doing so, became one of the unsung heroes who won World War II.